Okay, so we're going to go over in this video just some basic terminology for trigonometry, right? In particular, just angles and how to describe angles and eventually measure them, right? So we're going to start by very simple geometric construction. Get a ruler here. So this is what we call a ray, right? So we call this P a point, right, in space. For now, we just kind of think of it living on some plane, right? No kind of coordinate system attached with it, right? An array, think of it as just kind of instead of a line that goes out in both directions, array has a starting point and then it kind of goes out indefinitely, right? So this object here we can define, or we can call a ray with initial point P. Initial point P. All right. So that is kind of our basic building block for an angle, right? An angle is actually going to be two rays that share the same initial point, right? So if we draw an angle somewhere again just out here in space, right, we can think of these as two rays, right, that share that initial point P. Right? Now, when we introduce this angle, this P is called, or we call this an angle with vertex P. Okay. All right, and then now we're going to start kind of building our vocabulary, right? We have ray, initial point P, an angle with vertex P. Now we're going to classify. Let's look at some just kind of special types of angles. You can think here of almost like a line, but let's say this was the vertex. We can call this a straight angle. And then the other extreme is if we had kind of two rays that were kind of overlapping each other, right? Let's call this Q just to switch up our letters. Let's say we had another ray. It was just kind of on top of it. All right, almost like it's just no angle at all. All right, now when we measure an angle, we have to kind of think of, well, what do we mean, or what are we defining as the measure of an angle, right? Is there more than one way to kind of think of measuring an angle, right? So what I mean by that is, let's say that we had something that looked, we have a vertex here, P. We have two rays going out here. All right, and we say, all right, how would we measure this angle, right? If we measure it, are we referring to something like this, right? I'll call that angle alpha, right? This Greek letter to as alpha. Right? Or am I referring to this other measurement? I can also think of this as out here. Right? And I'll call that beta. Right? Another Greek letter. All right? So as you'll notice here, throughout this course, we usually define angles in terms of Greek letters. Alpha, beta, theta, gamma are some common ones that are used. Right? And here we have an example of just using alpha and beta. Right? But we can think, all right, when we think of measurement, what are we actually talking about when we mean measurement, right? And how do we measure angles? Right? How do we describe them? One form of measurement is degree measure. One way to measure angles is using degrees. All right. So here I have a protractor. Right. So if you notice here that we have it's in degrees. Right. And it starts from, if we're measuring from this side here, right, this would be the vertex of an angle. Right. And you could see here as we work our way, we have, this is half a circle here. So we have a 180 degrees, but a full rotation, that would be 360 degrees. Right, so we think here, right, 360 degrees is one rotation. All right, that would be kind of the one where one ray on top of another. Now the straight edge, or the straight angle, that would be 180 degrees. All right. And now another special angle here is something referred to as a right angle. All right, so whenever you see diagrams and you see this little square here in the corner, right, that is a right angle. Right, and the measurement here is 90 degrees. Right, so here we have one rotation. This is half a rotation. And this one is 1/4 of a rotation. All right. So now more importantly here, if we kind of based off of this, is that as long as I know what percentage or what fraction of a rotation is, I can pretty much measure, I can measure it in degrees, right? So if I say that I know I go 2/3 of a rotation, right, I know how to find the degree measure of this, right? We can take 2/3 and we can multiply that by 360, right? Degrees, right? Don't forget that degree, so we know what kind of units, think of it like a unit, right? What kind of units we're dealing with. All right, so that would be 240 degrees. All right. Okay. All right, so we have here our kind of special types of angles here. So we're going to introduce some more ways to describe angles, right? Besides one rotation, a straight angle, or a right angle, right? Other types of angles is something called an acute angle. All right, so here, an acute angle has the property that it is bigger than 0, but less than 90 degrees, right? Let's say if this was, we'll call this beta here, right? So an acute angle has a property where beta is less than 90 degrees, but greater than 0 degrees. Okay. All right. Another type of way to describe an angle, right, would be obtuse, an obtuse angle. Okay, so for this one is going to be bigger than 90. It looks something like this. All right, let's call this one beta, just to use a different symbol here. Right, this is Greek letter theta. All right. Now the property that an obtuse angle has is that it is less than 180 degrees, so not quite a straight angle, but bigger than a right angle, right? Bigger than 90 degrees. So that is what we refer to as an obtuse angle. Okay, so kind of just basic terminology here when we're referring to angles. The next thing here is So the next thing here, we're going to classify kind of relationship between two angles. All right. So two of the special angles that we talked about earlier were a right angle and a straight angle. All right, so let's look at a straight angle. And we're gonna define this idea of what are called supplementary angles. So let's say that I have two angles, right? I'll call this one alpha, and then this one to be beta. All right. So what we have here are what are known as, this is what's called supplementary angles. And the property that these have is that supplementary angles, when you add them together, they equal to 180 degrees. Right? That is a property of supplementary angles. Now, the other relationship that we're going to establish is what is known as complementary. Now, this one describes a relationship between two angles that sum up to a right angle. So let's say that this was a right angle here. And what makes it complementary is that, or two angles are complementary. Let's call this P. And let's call this, from here to here, we'll call this angle gamma. Right, another Greek letter. And then we'll call this one theta. Okay, so what we have here are examples of complementary angles. And the property that these have is when you sum them, these equal to 90 degrees. Okay, so here's just our basic introduction to get us comfortable using some of these new terms that we'll be seeing in our book and in future topics, right? Just talking about how to describe angles and really what is an angle in terms of a geometric construction. Okay, thank you.